Hiring your first employee is a huge step for your Amazon business, but if you get it wrong, it will cost you time, money, and a ton of frustration. Unfortunately, most people mess up their first hire. They pick the wrong person, they don't set things up properly, and they fail to delegate the right way. I see many Amazon sellers get completely stuck just because they didn't get hiring right. They're sitting on brands with huge potential, but they just can't get to the next level because they don't have the team. Before I hired our first employee, I thought that it would be simple. Just find someone, give them tasks, and free up my time. But that's not how it works. The difference between a smooth hiring and a complete disaster comes down to just a few key things, and I'll break them down for you today. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do before making your first hire so you can avoid expensive mistakes and actually get the help you need. So let's dive in. Number 1, clarify why you're hiring. And I understand that this may sound obvious, but let me explain. The issue here is that most people kind of skip this step because their idea before they get hiring is that they just need to get help. But we need to go deeper. We need to be crystal clear on what we want to get out of this hire and what problem in the business we are even trying to solve with this new person. So let's say I spend way too much time managing our supply chain, all the shipments and POs. I'm spending 15-20 hours a week. So my objective, what I want to get out of this new hire, is to save 15 hours of my time every week. Because if I don't do this, and if I just say I need to get help, it will be very hard for me to even evaluate whether the new hire was successful or not. But if I actually sit down and define what success looks like before I even start hiring, it will be way easier to define the hiring requirements. It will be way easier to test the person, to interview them. It will be way easier to communicate our expectations. And of course, evaluate whether the hire was successful or not. So I may write not only that I want to save 15 hours of my time every week, that is the underlying objective, but I might go even into more detail. I might write that this person will be managing the relationships with our supplier, with our forwarders, right? They will be taking care of all of the communication. They will be updating all of our spreadsheets, right? They will be forecasting our inventory. They will be sending goods from our 3PL to Amazon without me getting involved. And once I'm doing this, I can also write down what a failure would look like, right? The failure would be if I still had to spend more time in supply. The failure would be if I had to step into the process every now and then, right? The failure would be if the person would make mistakes, right? In inventory forecasting, right? They would determine incorrect order quantities, right? So I really want to get into a lot of detail here to specify what am I actually trying to get out of this? And I can't believe I have to stress this out, but the right hire should move your business forward and not create more work for you. And the reason why am I saying that? Because I'm seeing it again and again, that people hire someone who doesn't have experience, they don't clarify what they actually want to get, so they basically spend more time managing this person than if they would do it themselves, right? So it basically creates more work for them and it doesn't move the business forward, right? So this is very important. Number 2, hire sooner rather than later. And I want to really stress this out because most people start looking for employees once they feel like they really need help, like when they are super busy. But at that time, you don't really have the capacity to learn and prepare and to even go through the process and to train the employee, right? So you want to start hiring sooner rather than later. You can start with a small, low-risk commitment, right? You can hire someone for 5 hours a week just to get understanding what it looks like to manage someone, what it looks like to hire someone and train them and, review their performance. Because once you really need help, that you are so busy that you can't do anything, how are you going to find the time to hire the person, right? And to learn this new skill set of hiring and managing and leadership. So I highly recommend, again, starting small, bringing on board someone for, let's say, those 5-10 hours a week to help you with a specific process in the business, right? So this really helps you test the waters and get a new perspective. Because I think the important part here is also that you will understand the power of hiring, right? And suddenly you will start thinking differently. You are no longer a solopreneur doing everything yourself. You have this new perspective that you are actually able to hire someone and they can do the work for you. Number 3, hire for ownership, not tasks. And this really goes hand in hand with our first point, because hiring is not just about offloading tasks. We want someone else to be accountable and to own a specific process in our business. And if we hire someone just to get help, they often just follow our instructions. So we remain the bottleneck, right? If I hire someone who is just a follower, I will remain the bottleneck. I want someone who can own that particular process and be accountable for solving problems and improving the workflows and, most importantly, making decisions independently. I often use this simple framework where I say we have 3 levels of competence. Follower, someone who just follows our instructions. Specialist, someone who has the contextual understanding and they can own the specific process. And lastly, we have an expert, right? We don't need to go into too much detail, just the difference between a follower and a specialist. If we hire a specialist, they can own the specific process. But if we are working with a follower, often people hire a general VA, which is perfectly fine, but we shouldn't really have the expectation that they will be able to handle the ownership of a specific process in our business. So when it comes to hiring someone full-time for our business, we should hire for ownership and not just for offloading tasks. Number 4, who to hire is defined by what we want to delegate. Because if we don't define what we want to delegate, again, we kind of end up hiring a general VA because we need a little bit of help with customer service, maybe some product research, maybe a little bit of PPC. But if we do this, we are unable to hire a specific expertise. So before I should start asking myself who I want to hire, again, I should ask myself, what do I want to delegate? This will then help me to determine the specific role that should then be accountable for this particular part of the business. That allows me to hire for the expertise, right? So if I know that this person will be in charge of our supply chain, I know what are the right skill sets for this instead of some generalist. And then it makes it easier to transfer the ownership because we defined the role by the tasks we want to delegate, right? By the processes. So it makes defining the accountability easier and then, of course, transferring the accountability from us to our new employee. And of course, if it's someone who specializes and is looking for a career in that particular area, let's say supply management, we can expect better performance, right? They will likely want to learn. They bring some expertise. They bring some know-how. So it's then easier to train them because most of the time they can just hit the ground running because they already have years of experience in that particular area. Number 5, expect mistakes and be okay with it. Because the truth is that most tasks in our business, they don't have to be perfect. They just need to get done, right? And 80% done by someone else is 100% awesome. Because I see that many sellers start panicking when their new hire makes a mistake. And suddenly they start thinking, oh, I should have done that myself. This was a mistake. No one will ever do it as well as me. But the truth is that you also make mistakes, but there is no one else to really pinpoint it for you, right? So if you have your employee and they make a mistake, it's completely normal. The truth is that every new hire needs this adjustment period, right? Whether it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, there will be a learning curve. But of course, we need to understand that often if they make a mistake, it's just a reflection of our business and our processes and our workflows, right? So first of all, the onboarding needs to be very well defined, right? They need to understand what we actually want from them and setting up clear expectations and training period. Because if we don't set clear expectations, it will often lead to misunderstandings, right? But if we do, we can then also document the processes, what we want them to do, and there will be more transparency and clarity. And of course, the mistakes will still happen, and that's completely normal. We just want to see that there is an upward trend, right? We want to see that they are improving, that there is this learning curve we need to keep in mind. Because rarely ever someone will come hit the ground running the first week, right? They can have the expertise, but it's still accounting for the adjustment period. The important part here is that they need to correct themselves, right? There needs to be this feedback loop. So rather than us always stepping in, correcting the mistake, we need to guide them to find the right solution, right? We need to guide them and explain why the mistake happened, and they will be the ones figuring out how to fix it because we want to prevent micromanaging. Number 6, hire slow, fire fast. Now, I don't want to discourage you, but the truth is that hiring the wrong person will cost you more than having no one at all. Because of course the issues are compounding. We are paying salary, we're wasting our time training them, and we spend a lot of time fixing their errors. So the key here is to pay attention to red flags early. So often the first 30 to 60 days will help us understand whether the hire is a good fit for the long term or not. These are the red flags I would keep in mind, right? And of course, if we have a proper hiring process, we should be able to identify these red flags early during the hiring process before we even bring them on board. But of course, there are still a few things we should keep in mind when we start working together during the adjustment period. Now, one of the biggest red flags is lack of proactiveness, right? If they only follow instructions, they never want to solve problems, that kind of indicates that they are the follower and not the specialist. The second one, I would even say the worst one, is poor communication, right? If they cannot give clear answers, they don't follow up, they ghost us, we have to wait for their replies too long, and if they reply, it's not clear, so we need to follow up, we need to ask for them to clarify, right? This is the biggest time waster, and for me, that's one of the biggest red flags. Another one is no progress in learning, and I want to say this again, that mistakes are normal, right? Mistakes will happen, and you need to expect it to be okay with bringing someone else on board. But repeated mistakes are a red flag. If they repeat the same mistake, right? We talked about this in the previous step that we need to have these feedback loops where we guide them to fix these errors. But if they then repeat the same errors, that is a big red flag because they are not learning, they are not improving. And lastly, taking ownership, right? If they avoid accountability, because we said that ownership of a specific process is the most important thing, right? Transferring the accountability. But if they avoid the accountability and make excuses like that's not my job, or someone else messed up, this person did that, and blaming others, they don't take ownership, and that's also a big red flag for us. I would recommend to set up a performance review after 30 days. And if they are not improving, you need to cut your losses early, right? This is important, again, referring back to the first point where we had the success scenario. So after 30 days of hiring this person, we want to sit down and compare the reality with the success scenario we defined before. And of course, we need to be rational, right? We can take a look at it and evaluate all of the points we defined in the success scenario, whether it's real or not, right? Whether it's happening or not. Because I really want to remind you here that it's important to be rational and data-driven. Because I noticed that a lot of people who struggle with hiring, they don't want to bring someone else on board, they're afraid that someone will do a bad job. Once they actually hire, they are quite reluctant to then fire them when they realize that they are not performing, right? So they kind of resist bringing someone else on board. But when they do, they again resist firing them if it's not working out very well. But of course, firing is hard, but it's part of the business. And we need to understand that as a business owner, you need to keep in mind what's best for your business and not be emotional when it comes to that. The best way to prevent all of these issues is to follow a proper hiring process. And I have a 1-hour guide right here on YouTube that will show you everything you need for free. So make sure to go and check it out right now. I will see you next week. Bye.